To begin our discussion on persuasion, I want to start with a quote by Mark Skousen, who said, "The triumph of persuasion over force is the sign of a civilized society." This quote is perfect for explaining what persuasion is all about. A lot of times when people think about the concept of persuasive speaking, they think of it as power or control or force or manipulation. And really, that's not what persuasion is at all. However, if we can learn how to persuade people effectively, it's a really great life skill and professional communication tool. So today we want to talk about the what of persuasion and the how of persuasion. Let's start out with the what of persuasion, and that begins with defining it. Dr. Grice and Dr. Skinner are two communication scholars. In fact, Dr. Grice used to teach at Radford University, and in their textbook, they define persuasion as the process of influencing another person's values, beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors. Now, the key word in this definition is the word influence. The best way to explain what influence is to tell you a story about my husband. Now, my husband is one of the most stubborn people you will meet in your entire life. It doesn't matter how right I am, he just will not listen to me at certain times. So I have to really drop these little hints and these little seeds of ideas for him, and say, hey, I wonder if you did this, if that would make your life easier. Or, gee, I wonder if this would really benefit you, and maybe this would be a good way of getting what you want. And then come to find out, a week later, he'll come to me and say, you know what, I had a great idea. And I'm like, well, did you now, honey? And instead of me nagging him, instead of me trying to force him to accept my opinion, I just have to find ways to connect what I'm saying to what benefits him and allow him to come to this conclusion on his own. It's kind of like you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. That's what influence is all about. There are three basic types of persuasive speeches. A speech to convince influences the audience's values and beliefs. A speech to actuate influences their behaviors. And a speech to inspire influences their feelings. Now, our ultimate goal in our persuasive speech is to end with a call to action that the audience actually does. So therefore, that's a behavior, which means we are giving a speech to actuate. Now, in order to influence the audience's behaviors, we do have to speak to their values, beliefs, and feelings along the way. But ultimately, we're giving a speech to actuate. So we understand that persuasion isn't power or force or manipulation. It's not trying to force somebody to accept your opinion or showing how their opinion is wrong. Instead, it's trying to influence them and find some common ground between your two positions. But how do we actually put this into practice? How do we do it? That brings us to the how of persuasion. We are going to be using a slightly different speech structure for this speech called Monroe's motivated sequence. Now, if you take a look at Monroe's motivated sequence, you'll see that there are some things that we're pretty familiar with, like the introduction and the conclusion. All we've done is we've taken the body and we've broken it out into three new steps. So let's walk through each of these parts one by one. We start out with Roman numeral 1, which is the introduction. And there are the same 5 parts to the introduction that we've been using all semester long. Attention getter, focus on topic, credibility, relevance, preview of main points. Nothing new here. Roman numeral 2 is where we change things up a bit. In Roman numeral 2, we establish whether we have a problem or a need regarding our topic. And your topics could go either way. You really just need to think about which word, problem or need, represents what your message is about. So you establish your problem or need with 2 main points. These 2 main points are the reasons behind the problem or the reasons for the need. Then you move on to Roman numeral 3, which is the solution or satisfaction step. So if you said you had a problem, then you have a solution. If you have a need, you have a satisfaction. Again, you have 2 main points under this step. And these 2 main points address the 2 reasons that you brought up in that previous problem or need step. In both of these steps, you're going to be using lots and lots of research. So this is where all of your research comes into play, into these 2 steps. Once you've given them all the data, all the facts, you've really tapped into the logical side of their brain, then you move to Roman numeral 4, which is the visualization step. I like to think of the visualization step as a long transition that allows me to sort of tap into the audience's emotions right before I hit them with my conclusion. So no research here, no visual aids. Rather, the visualization step is where you use your language to really use pathos or an emotional appeal to reach the audience. Maybe you put the audience in the shoes of someone experiencing this topic, or you create this mental picture with all of your vivid imagery to explain how the world will get better or worse if we don't do something about this. So again, you really try to tap into the appropriate emotion that is going to motivate your audience. And then you move to Roman numeral 4, which is your conclusion. And here we have our summary of main points and our circular closure, just like we did before, and then we add the call to action at the very end. So you could see the 5 parts of Monroe's motivated sequence really aren't all that different from the basic intro, body, and conclusion that we've been doing all semester long. Okay, so you get Monroe's motivated sequence, but you might be asking yourself, all right, HTD, how do I actually turn this into an outline? So I'm going to walk you through those steps by using my sample duo topic that I referenced several weeks ago in one of my video lectures, and that was the topic of teeth. Now, all of you guys should have your persuasive specific purpose statement and call to action already figured out. So if we go back to my sample topic of teeth, my specific purpose statement for the persuasive was to persuade my classmates to develop good oral hygiene habits, and my call to action was to floss your teeth twice this week. So our very first thing that we need to create is that thesis. I'm going to take this goal of the speech, develop good oral hygiene habits, and flesh that out into a complete sentence that really captures what my message is all about. So here it is. Proper oral health care habits are essential to overall health because problems in your mouth can affect the rest of your body. So now I've got my thesis statement. I know what I'm talking about here, and I know what my call to action is. So now I need to go figure out the 2 main points in this problem or need, solution, or satisfaction steps. The first thing I need to decide is if I've got a problem or a need. Now, I could say that it's a problem that people don't take good care of their teeth, or I could say that there's a need for oral health care. And in my mind, I feel like it's more of a need. For one, it's a little bit easier to say. Problem with people not taking good care of their teeth, or a need for oral health care. So it sounds to me like I have a need. So I'm going to go ahead and delete problem, and I'm going to delete solution, because if I have a need, that means I have a satisfaction. All right, so let me put this need and satisfaction into some parallel wording. I'm going to call it a need for oral health care. And oral health care kind of seems a little bit long. I'm just going to call it oral hygiene. I feel like that is more appropriate. And ways to improve oral hygiene. Okay, so my overall need is the need for oral hygiene, and my overall satisfaction is ways to improve oral hygiene. All right, so now's where I need to do a little bit of background research. So I'm just going to pop into Firefox here, and I'm going to go to the Virginia Western Library. Western just recently updated their website, so you can go down to quick links here at the bottom to find the library. And I'm going to go to Find Articles and Databases. So a good place to start when you're just doing background research is Gale Virtual Reference Library. So I'm going to open Gale into a new tab, and I'm going to put in a couple of search keywords and see what I come up with. So I've got oral health care. Notice that I'm putting it in quotation marks, so I'm searching for the phrase oral health care, and you can see that it actually does come up here. So let's go ahead and see what comes up. Well, there's the oral health entry here from the Encyclopedia of Public Health. I'm going to open this up and sort of scan it and just see what I see. Looks like it's talking about how oral health can lead to pain, infection, absence from school or work, poor nutrition, poor general health, even death. Show that it can lead to low birth weight babies, heart disease, stroke. I see that it's talking about some of the major oral diseases, Also see that it says that it's a neglected epidemic, so that's kind of crazy. That might be, oh, and in 2000, there were 125 million Americans without dental insurance. Looks like there's certain high-risk populations. This is interesting. It's talking about public health dentists. It's kind of interesting. Only dental public health has the potential to make a population-based impact on communities. And dental public health is the science and art of preventing and controlling dental disease and promoting dental health through organized community efforts. That's kind of interesting. That might be something I can put in my satisfaction step. So I see a lot of stuff about tooth decay. I see stuff about periodontal disease. Looks like some other kinds of mouth sort of diseases. I'm going to go back into Gale and I'm going to type in oral hygiene. Let's see what comes up there. And I'm going to look at this Gale Encyclopedia of Nursing and Allied Health entry to see what I can find. So this has got some good precaution and prevention things, like individual things we can do, like using a toothbrush. Complications, it's talking about all those oral hygiene, all the stuff that can go wrong in your mouth. Patient education, again, that looks like a big thing that could be good in my satisfaction step. Let me actually put in oral hygiene and effects. Let's see if I can find some other health effects. Oh wow, effects on public health, cost to society. So I found some good information. I think the need for oral hygiene, there's definitely some health effects in your mouth and also in the rest of your body. So maybe I could say need for your mouth and for your health. So underneath main point 1, I could put some research about some of the oral diseases like tooth decay or oral cancer or gingivitis, those kinds of things. And then for your health is where I could maybe bring up stuff about how poor oral hygiene could lead to heart disease or stroke or even low-weight babies. So now under satisfaction, ways to improve oral hygiene. So I kind of need to make sure that main point 1 here addresses main point 1 up here in the need step for your mouth. So I think one thing that I'm going to put in here is personal action. Talking about all those different things you can do regarding nutrition and brushing and flossing and all that type of stuff. And then for your health, I'm going to put community action. And that's where I can talk about those dental public health programs that they were talking about and how education really is the best way to combat this issue. So here is my speech in a nutshell. I have a need for oral hygiene for your mouth and for your health, and ways to improve oral hygiene through personal action and community action. And notice there's some parallel wording here. So under the need, I've got oral hygiene as my parallel wording. And then for my 2 main points, I've got for your and for your. And then under the satisfaction, these 2 guys parallel each other as well. Action and action. So your parallel wording should really be this simple. And then it's just a matter of plugging that into your outline skeleton. Okay, so I'm going to put the persuasive presentation, oral health care. And there's immediately some things that I can go ahead and plug in, like the specific purpose and the thesis statement. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste these guys into my outline. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and set up my outline skeleton now. Roman numeral 1 is the introduction, and I'm going to just simply leave some things blank because I'm not really concerned about filling everything in and doing all the research. I just want to fill out the outline skeleton. So I've got all the parts of my introduction here. And there's some things that I can immediately fill in, like the focus on topic. I can use my thesis statement here, so I'm going to copy and paste that. And I can also fill in the preview of main points. In the preview of main points, I just want you to preview the overall need and the overall satisfaction. So I can say, so today I want to talk about copy this, the need for oral hygiene, and ways to improve oral hygiene. So notice that I didn't change anything, and I just literally copied and pasted my parallel wording here. So next is the problem or need step, and we've already said that I have a need, so I'm going to put need step here. And we're going to use some of our previous speech structure items here to set things up. The first thing we're going to have is main point. All right, the first thing we have here is we're going to use something called an internal preview. And this internal preview sort of acts like a little mini preview of main points for this need step. The reason why we're doing that is this is a fairly involved speech, so we want to make it as easy as possible for the audience to follow along. So the internal preview is going to state the parallel wording for the overall need and main point 1 and main point 2. So let's start with the need for oral hygiene, and here's where I'm going to put for your mouth and for your health. Notice that I literally just copied and pasted my parallel wording. I didn't change anything or overcomplicate it. I think for your mouth and for your health feels a little repetitive, so I'm going to take this extra 4 out, so that way I've got your mouth and your health. And I can also go ahead and fill in my signposts and say first we need to take care of our teeth. First, we need to take care of your teeth for your mouth. And then here we have next, you also need good oral hygiene for your health. Notice I've got my parallel wording, your mouth and your health here. Okay? I've left blanks for my subpoints under each main point, and I've also left blanks for my transitions. You'll want a transition in between your 2 main points here and also in between these 2 steps. So I have a need. That means that Roman numeral 3 is a satisfaction. And I'm going to follow this same process here. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste this to make it easier. And then I'm just going to change out the parallel wording. So internal preview, I'll say, now let's look at ways to improve oral hygiene through personal action and community action. Right, first we can start with personal action. And here we're going to say, lastly, we can do more with community action. Okay. Again, notice that I used the exact same parallel wording that I did from my planning here. Again, I've got spaces for my research as well as my transition in between. Roman numeral 4 is the visualization step. We're just going to leave this blank for now because we're going to go back and fill that in later on once we've figured out all of our research. And now we've got the conclusion, and the conclusion has a couple of parts. So I got the summary of main points, circular closure, and call to action. Again, we can go ahead and copy and paste our call to action here. We probably want to put that into a complete sentence. So I can say, so let's kick start this movement by movement, I challenge you to take this sample of dental floss and floss your teeth twice this week. Got a little typo there. All right, now in the summary of main points, we are going to preview everything, the overall need and 2 main points, and the overall satisfaction and 2 main points. I think it's easiest just to copy and paste my internal previews, so I'm going to grab this first one up here and plop it down there. And I'm going to grab this next one and plop it down there. And I'm going to change this up a little bit. Today, I talked about the need for oral hygiene for your mouth and your health, but there are ways to improve oral hygiene through personal action and community action. And then just to remind myself, I'm going to put a space for my works cited list down here at the bottom. Okay, so now I have an outline skeleton, and all that's left is to start plugging in my research and start filling in the rest of the blanks. So we know now the how of persuasion, the fact that it's this process of influencing people, and influence really requires common ground. And we also know the how of persuasion and how to use Monroe's motivated sequence to create a persuasive message. So like Mark Skousen said, persuasion is really much more effective over force in a civilized society. So think about that in terms of the communication you see around you. It's much more effective to create common ground with the opposition than it is to force them or try to change their opinion.